which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can I have a approval of the agenda? Motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second?
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the approval of minutes of the Board of Ed meeting on,
Public comment.
oh, excuse me, I skipped ahead. Public comment, I'm sorry. Anybody want to stay, come up and speak into the microphone to give us your name and your address? We have a 3-minute talking limit.
Prior to the first comments, Bob, is there anyone notifying people we're here to the notice has it in the other room or having it here?
Kevin was out there before, nobody was in there.
No, there's no notice there.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure so that.
Well,
Oh,
we
it
have-
says auditorium. I thought I saw a library on the website. All right, on the website as well? All right.
We
sorry.
don't have our comments on the end because we have the public hearing on the Lyman thing. Yes.
Okay, here we go. Oh, it's weird, I'm like on an angle. Okay. All right, so can I ask a question of the board before I make a comment? Am I allowed to do that?
Give us your name and address, and we
Yes,
we
my
don't
name
take
is Rhonda
questions
Riggett
at this
Stevens.
time.
I live at 40 Banta Lane in Durham.
And we
So-
can't answer questions.
You
during
cannot
public
answer
comment.
questions.
No.
Okay,
time.
then I will just read my public comment. Okay. So, let's see if I can see here. Okay. I'm like really awkwardly standing. Can I move this? I'm like on an angle. Okay. So, can we make this lower? I'm like really, really short. Okay. All right. Got myself set up here. Okay, so what I have here is a FOIA request, which I'll be submitting in writing. It's a Connecticut FOIA parental request for informed consent documentation for the EAU face mask device, PCR testing, and EAU SARS-CoV-2 inoculation with regard to experimental healthcare interventions. So I already stated my name and my address. So this is, and I'll just read it out to you. Dear Superintendent of Schools and RSD Board of Education, per the US FDA, the EUA face mask device is used for source control for the virus, and the EUA PCR test is used to detect the SARS-CoV-2 virus in a person, and the EUA SARS-CoV inoculation is used against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The EUA face mask device, EUA PCR test, and EUA COVID-19 inoculation are experimental healthcare interventions. Informed consent documentation for all experimental healthcare interventions must be provided to students, the subject, legal guardians that occur in the school setting and on school property. Per the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, these experimental healthcare interventions must pose no more than minimal risk to the individual. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, minimal risk means, quote unquote, that the probability and magnitude of harm or discomfort anticipated in the research are not greater in and of themselves than ordinarily encountered in daily life or during the performance of routine physical or psychological examinations or tests. As an American citizen and a citizen of Connecticut and a citizen of Durham, a guardian's right to refuse consent to participate in an experimental healthcare intervention on behalf of a minor child is not voided during a federal or state declared state of emergency. Under the Fifth Amendment, the U.S. Constitution supports an individual's right to refuse medical treatment. Please be advised that under the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act, as codified in Chapter 14 of the Connecticut General Statutes, public records or files are defined as follows. Public records or files means they are recorded data or information relating to the conduct of the public's business, prepared, owned, used, received, or retained by the public agency, to which the public agency is entitled to receive a copy by law or, or a contract under Section 1-28, whether such data is information, whether it's handwritten, typed, tape recorded, videotaped, printed, photocopied, photographed, or recorded in any other method. So, under the Connecticut FOIA, I am requesting copies of the following public records, including emails, pertaining to the record or file from RSD13 Superintendent and Board of Education. For each numbered request, if the record or file does not exist, or email, please inform me of that in writing. Number 1, for the period of September 20 through June 2021, please provide me with a copy of the informed consent documentation with the benefits and risks, including minimal risk documentation for the 2021 school year for the EUA face mask device, an experimental healthcare intervention that you or your predecessors provided to the guardians of all students of RSD13 when the school district forced all students to wear the EUA face mask device as a healthcare intervention in the school setting, as a prerequisite for participating in in-person learning and academic, non-academic, curricular, and extracurricular activities. I'm also requesting the same documentation for the current school year. That would be number 2. Number 3, for the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of the RSD13 informed consent documentation with the benefits and risks, including minimal risk documentation for the 21-22 school year for the experimental healthcare intervention of the mandatory wearing of the EUA face mask device as a prerequisite for participation in school learning, academic, non-academic, curricular, and extracurricular activities. I understand that all students all students with the exception of any student with a written exemption specified in Executive Order 13A. Number 4, for the period of September 20 through present day, please provide me with a copy of the documentation that demonstrates that the school district has met its clinical investigatory obligation under the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations for the use of the experimental healthcare intervention of forcing students to wear the EUA face mask device. Title 21 of the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations states the following.
I think your time is up and you're going to submit that to us, right?
Yes,
Right.
I am. But nobody else is here to speak, right?
Well, we'll see.
So can I finish what I'm reading?
We have a 3-minute
You
time
can
limit.
come back after everybody else has a chance.
But does anybody else want to speak?
Please, I'll take care of that aspect, all right?
So I can come back once you ask?
Yes. All right, is there any other comment? If not, you're welcome to come back to finish up.
Number 5, for the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of all records and files that pertain to the proposed and/or investigatory EUA PCR testing of Connecticut public school students in the school setting, including on-school property. For the period of July 20 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of the RSD13's informed consent with minimal risk documentation for the EUA PCR testing of minor children in the school setting, including on-school property. Number 7, for the period of July 21 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of the records and files that outline or specify the plan for District 13 to impart the Connecticut State Department of Public Health in conjunction with the Connecticut Department of Education's recommended K-12 curriculum materials, campaign materials, flyers, activities, Vax to School, Connecticut Toolkit, targeting students and their families to receive the COVID-19 inoculation. Number 18, for the period of July 21 through present day, please provide me with the records and files that outline or specify the rewards to be distributed to students by RSD13 for compliance with participating in wearing the EUA face mask device, participating in PCR testing, or receiving EUA COVID-19 inoculations in the school setting. Number 9, For the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with the records and files that specify the consequences for students who removed the EUA face mask device in the school setting. Number 10, please provide me with a copy of the school district policy that prohibits direct and indirect coercion with regard to a guardian's right to refuse consent on their child's behalf to participate in an experimental healthcare intervention of EUA face masks, EUA PCR testing, and EUA inoculations in the COVID-19 inoculations in the school setting. The U.S. Code of Federal Regulations requires the absence of coercion on the part of experimenters, and in this case it would be the school district administration and staff, to compel a subject, who is the student, to participate in experimental healthcare interventions, both directly and indirectly. Coercion is a punishment for noncompliance. Number 11, for the period of September 20 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of the informed consent school district policy that explains an individual's right to a free and equal public education without the threat of direct or indirect coercion, even when a guardian refuses to consent on the child's behalf to participate in experimental healthcare interventions. Denying student access to free and equal education for refusing to consent to experimental healthcare interventions is coercion. Number 12, for the period of September 20 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of the school district policy that states the manner in which a student will be given access to free and equal education, public education when a guardian refuses to consent to the experimental healthcare intervention of the EUA face mask or EUA PCR testing or EUA COVID-19 inoculation. For the time period of August 20 through the present day, please provide me with the records and files for all COVID-19 related surveys distributed to the RSD13 staff and administration, with them as participants, and the tabulated results of those surveys. Number 14, for the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with a copy of all records and files that pertain to any investigatory efforts or legislative efforts to mandate EUA PCR testing for students as a prerequisite for attending in-person learning and activities, including academic, non-academic, curricular, and extracurricular for the 2021-22 school year.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
almost
very
done.
much. And
I have 3 more.
will be entered, the whole document will be entered into the record. But
Okay.
thank you very much.
So can I just read the 3 more?
We'll,
We waited like 5 minutes for the board members to come from the library.
is there any other public comment? If not, we
At
don't.
the public meeting.
Can I finish my last 3?
You can finish the
Thank
last
you.
area.
Okay. Number 15, for the period of June 2021 through the present day, please provide me with all records and files pertaining to the Connecticut State Department of Public Health, either alone or in conjunction with the State Department of Education, with regard to legislation or policy requiring students to report their COVID-19 inoculation verification status, inoculated or not inoculated against COVID-19, to the school district as a prerequisite for attending in-person learning and academic, non-academic, curricular, and extracurricular activities, or for the purpose of quarantining students who have not received the COVID-19 inoculation. Number 16, for the period of June 21 through 2021 through the present day, please provide me with with all records and files pertaining to RSD13 and/or Connecticut State Department of Education of Health and/or Connecticut State Department of Education regarding legislation or policies requiring staff to report their COVID-19 inoculation verification status, inoculated or not inoculated against COVID-19, to the school district. Number 17, for the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with all records and files relating to the mobile or stationary COVID-19 inoculation stations to be situated in on school property at District 13. And lastly, number 18, for the period of July 2021 through the present day, please provide me with all records and files relating to the mobile or stationary COVID-19 PCR testing stations to be situated in District 13. Final paragraph, I am requesting...
That's all.
Yeah, I'm...
Just
so-
thank you very much. For
all right,
your-
and also I'm saying here is that I'm requesting that the fees be waived because this request is in the public interest. Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, next item on the agenda is approval of minutes from the Board of Education regular meeting July 7th, 2021. Have a motion? Anybody?
So moved. Will they be approved?
Have a second? Any comment? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain.
And then a motion for the approval of the minutes of the Board of Education special meeting, July 19th, 2021.
Will they be approved?
Second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Two abstentions. The next board meeting is September 22nd at 2021. In terms of communications, I've received a number of comments. One from Cindy Felicia Kagan, who was interested in having choice for the masks. I received comments from Julie Moretta, Michael Boyle, Kara Nyland, Mike Muirs, Melissa Pichero, Eric Fenwick, Tara Eiler, Sherry Adams, Amity French Wilson, Katie Tejan, Melinda Lauderdale, Beth Ians, Lori Fusco, Elizabeth Shoddy, Tori Tasta, and Maya Liss, all asking that we continue to require masks for school this year. All basically the same kind of question, but lots of different points of view in it. And finally, I received a comment from Kelly Answorth about the asking for another year on the alignment closure. And Doug, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Maybe other
Oh, I'm sorry.
communications. Any other communications? I'm sorry.
No problem.
If not, the next item is superintendent's report.
Okay. I know that most people here, including board members, are probably most interested in our hearing on the John Lyman potential closure and what may or may not be happening with masks going forward. And of course, those are both topics later in the agenda, so I won't speak to them directly, but I guess I just want to share, and I was with most of my colleagues today with our state commissioner, that I think inside and outside of education, what I'm hearing is just, I guess disappointment is the best way to put it. We felt like even a month ago, we were in a great place with COVID rates and positivity rates and case counts and hospitalizations, and of course, that has changed due to the Delta variant and what it is doing, not just here locally, not just in the state, but across the country and across the world. So, as a staff, we have met and we've started communicating initially with families. We haven't put all the fine detail because we're still waiting for more direction from the state. But I guess what I would share with you all as board members and for members of the public is that as of this moment, we kind of plan to start the school year more or less the way we ended in the spring. And the only real exception there that I'm aware of is that we're not going to have the remote learning option. It's going to be an in-person. And again, that is a complete change from our state. But I personally believe that having kids in school is the best thing for them and their education. So I'm happy that we did that last year, started before I got here, and that we are able to do that. So again, we may get into more of this later in the agenda, and we'll be happy to answer any questions folks have at that time. Some other topics, and just some quick updates that some for the board, but some for the public also. The board is aware that on July 19th, since the last time we met, there was a special executive session of the board, and after that session, we did appoint Mr. Matthew Warner as the new principal here at Coggins-Shog High School, and I'm happy to report that he started almost a week ago on August 2nd, and he's very busy, but he's very happy to be here and meeting folks and getting everything as it needs to be prior to the arrival. I will also, arrival of our learners rather, I think it's fair to say, not just for the district, but for Matt, one thing that has commanded our immediate priority has been the search for replacement for our assistant principal here at the high school. And we are in the middle of that search process, but I did want to let folks know that we had a pretty significant interest in this position, 119 applicants in total. I've been in education a long time, been in administration a long time. This is the most I've ever seen for any one opening, and I think that says positive things about our district and about this school, that many individuals are interested in serving here. So we are moving that process along, and we hope to name or appoint someone by the end of next week. And I will defer to the chairman and the board if you all want to have any interaction with that candidate before we name them, as we did for the principal. Again, I'm new here, and you don't have to tell me at this moment, but I give you that more as a heads up, because if that's something we do need to do, you'd have to kind of think about your calendars, because we do want to get that person named and get them here as soon as possible, which would likely be after the start of the school year, but hopefully not too much after that. Speaking of the start of the school year, believe it or not, and staff correct me if I'm wrong, but I think August 23rd is our orientation for new teachers and other employees. So that is right around the corner, and that's exciting. Our convocation is currently scheduled for the 27th of August. That's the first day that the majority of our teachers and other employees report back. And if you didn't know, the first day of school is September 1st. So our teachers are coming, our learners are coming, and of course, as we'll get into later, there may still be a lot of unknowns about some of the details related to COVID and how that may impact us, but certainly we are ready and we are excited. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for Doug? If not, Kim, for the finance report?
Okay, for the month of July, we are 8% expended. Some of those expenditures are for payroll for 12-month staff, ESSER summer school opportunities, which will be reimbursed by the ESSER grant, and extended school year staff members. We have deposited health savings accounts for those employees who receive them. We have prepaid our diesel for the year. We have prepaid our fuel. We have paid our property insurance. We have transferred $360,000 to capital for the budget, and also paid our July debt service payment. Here at the high school, we have a chiller that has stopped functioning. Right now, we're operating on 2 out of 3, and we can handle it for the summer simply because of the reduced body load. But as soon as the students come back, and certainly under the time of quality air exchange due to COVID, we've got to get it replaced. So I'm researching costs. We do not have any savings in our capital reserve for this. It is an 18-year-old system. It's just about end of life. And we have a couple different options: refurbished, new, energy savings. So we're looking into the costs as well as Eversource incentive rebate. Once we come up with the cost, we need to talk about how we're going to fund it, whether we look towards the 2021 surplus, the COVID grant, or also maybe a bank loan. So it could be in the neighborhood of $180,000 before the incentive. I'll come back next meeting with a little bit more information, probably some exact quote figures, and we can decide from there.
That wasn't part of our energy savings.
Nope, and I'm
program.
glad you asked that, because we had a list of, they went around the building, and we picked the items that had the most payback, and that wasn't one. That only had about $3,000 savings. So that was put aside, and we chose to do Memorial instead because it had a higher payoff. There's a sinkhole under the Coggins track. I don't know if you've seen it. It's all caution taped off out there. That was from the heavy rains we had back in July. The sinkhole itself is not covered by insurance, but damage done by the sinkhole may be covered by insurance. Right now, we're working with a contractor who's got cameras below ground, trying to find out where the void is and what the cause of it is and how we can fix it. Costs to date are minimal, just the charge of his work and cameras. We could lose 4 lanes of track if we have to make a major repair. So that's something we're going to have to be talking about soon once we know the results. Hopefully it's a simple concrete repair of a pipe and we're done. So more to come on that. I just didn't want you to be surprised about that. Today, we signed bonding paperwork for 2.325 million out of the 6.9 that was authorized a couple years ago. We signed a bond anticipation note that's due May 2022, and our interest rate is 0.49%. Right now, we just borrowed the amounts at which were immediately expended, and we'll go out for another, whether it be a full bonding or another bond anticipation note at the time we need more funding. The auditors will return in October. Right now, we're closing out old POs and those that are carrying into the new year. And lastly, USDA has approved another waiver for free school lunch through the end of this school year. If you agree that it's prudent for us to apply for that waiver, which in my opinion I think is what I would like to do, then we can get that done and we can operate on the free lunch through the end of the school year.
Do we need a motion for the waiver?
I don't need a motion, and we don't have it necessarily on the agenda to vote, but, you know, as long as no one opposes me applying for the waiver, I can do so.
I think you should.
Okay.
Does everyone else agree?
Fine.
I said I
Yeah,
think you
yeah,
should.
everybody agreed, I think.
Does everyone agree?
Absolutely. Okay, thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Kim. Under new business, we have a vote to accept the Eagle Scout donation, and somebody describe that? Kim?
Oh, I don't know anything about it.
Maybe on my laptop.
Well, there's an Eagle Scout donation of,
Is our scout here to talk about it?
no, it was for another facility or building at,
I thought Meg said she put it in your stack. I could be wrong, but
no,
there wasn't a motion already written up or something.
no, I don't have it.
See if it was in the packet that was mailed to the board members.
I have that.
You have all the attachments?
I am.
Kim's pulling it up too.
I think it was for a gazebo, but I think it was similar to one at
It's
Memorial.
at
School.
Memorial School.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact amount of the donation in front of me, but there it is. See if it's in there.
Well, I move that we authorize the chair of the board to accept that donation on our behalf at his discretion.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Anybody else? We'll record in a minute what the actual donation is, but as far as I recall, it was a gazebo at Memorial School.
Bob,
All right,
can't hear
I
you.
have something here. I mean, this is not the motion, but they still have to order the pavilion. The donation will be between $7,000 and $7,800, and the donation is of rock for the base, and it also includes a volunteer for the site work. So that value would be added to the 7,000 plus.
And it's at Memorial.
It's at Memorial, yes.
Any change to your motion? Nope.
Shall I withdraw it?
No?
No, you can withdraw it or restate it.
How should it be restated?
Well, that
I think it's fine.
donation is valued between $7,000 and $7,800.
And do we take Bob out of the equation? Or we just approve it?
Yes. Just approve it.
Just approve it. I move we approve accepting the donation of the gazebo at Memorial.
Memorial.
Can you
And
second?
the seconder
I'll
of
second it again.
Thank you.
Aye. Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you very much.
I think it's just a very generous donation from the Boy Scouts. They always support us, so.
And I vote aye.
Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
I would, I'd like for the record to have the name of the Eagle Scout who is provided. He's not here.
That was not in the email I had.
Yeah,
from Matt.
but we will, for the record, we
Yep.
will put in the name of the Eagle Scout who has made that donation, and I will send him a thank you note. All right, the next is public comment guidelines. Christine had a suggestion that is being used in Milford, and it was sent out in your package. You want to talk about it, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I think tonight is a good example that I don't think that, and I've said this before in the past, I think other board members have said this. I actually at one point suggested we put a sign at the entrance of the meeting because I don't think people realize that we can't respond to their public comment and that, there is a time limit and that there are certain, whatever their public comment is should be on the agenda, and there are certain things that should not be brought up, such as personnel issues, specific student matter during public comment. So I had noticed this verbiage on the Milford Board of Ed agenda that I thought was excellent. And of course, we don't have to do this, but I think as long as everybody is okay with proceeding with some sort of language that maybe we just have our attorney look through real quick and just say this is what he would recommend. And then I think that should go on all agendas from the Board of Education moving forward.
Christine, perhaps a step further and refer this to the policy committee and add it to our already existing comment policy.
Yeah, we could, yeah, and I think whatever we could do to.
If it's not on the printed agenda, it's still in force.
Yeah, I just think that it should go on the agenda, or like I said, I remember, at this point it was probably before COVID, that's how I usually judge my timeline now. I remember suggesting a sign at the entrance just to let people know, because I, for one, very much appreciate when the public comes out to the meeting, but then I think they get taken back when they say something and then we kind of just sit here and stare at them and we can't converse back with them. So I think it would be very helpful to have something like that going forward. And it doesn't have to be what I sent out. I think as long as everybody is okay, I would like to proceed in that direction of getting something on the agenda. Honestly, before the next meeting would be my preference.
Well, we're having a policy
Meeting's coming up
shortly, so
Yeah.
why don't we?
Usually add that.
Okay, great. I think that'd be good.
And I think some of the language is, probably a little bit long, but we can make it fit our
Yeah, of course.
calendar agenda. And then your suggestion would be posted on the bottom of our agendas. Is that correct?
I kind of like where theirs was underneath the public comment so that people see it right there, because people I feel like people look at the agenda to know where the public comment is so that they know where to talk.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it draws the eye right there.
Okay.
If we make that print a little bigger though.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Most of what is written there, I agree with. I think it needs to be stated that it's on advice of our attorneys that we're not supposed to engage in discussion. So I don't think that's been mentioned why we quote can't. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that, in that if somebody raises an issue and states something that is factually incorrect, I think we should be able to address it. And I think if someone does have a question and asks a question and we have the answer, I think part of the reason we're advised not to answer is in case we give out misinformation. But if we have the information and we know the answer, I really don't understand why we can't answer the question that's being asked. So that's just my viewpoint, and I know we're going to discuss it in policy, but I just want to make everyone aware that's my opinion, and I'm only 1 out of 10, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think, though, then it's how do you answer one person and not the other person, you know? And so I think probably for consistency, you know, and it's always something we could say, thank you, we're going to add that to the agenda, or we can discuss it underneath communications, you know, something like that. But yeah, I think putting it to policy would be fine. I just think it's something that we really need.
I do think we could answer every person that asks a question with either, this is the answer, or we will get back to you with the answer when we have it. So, I don't think we'd have to leave anybody hanging, but that, you know, that's my opinion.
I would actually disagree with that. I think we can talk about this further, but I've seen way too many other board meetings recently where I don't think that the dynamic is promoting public good. It becomes a very back and forth thing, and I think it's extremely hard to regulate. So I think, you know, Christine's suggestion that, you know, potentially if there are points that need to be brought up, or you know, facts that need to be clarified on those issues, that you can do that during communications, but I would really encourage us not to engage in back and forth dialogue, because I just think it's really hard to regulate overall.
Thank you. We will refer the matter to policy committee and bring it forward. All right, now we will need a motion to recess a public hearing on the regionalization plan amendment to close Lyman School. Will be held at 7 o'clock. And at the public hearing, we will answer questions. It's not the regular board meeting. So anyway, we'll adjourn now till 7 o'clock, and we'll start the meeting right then.
Do we need a motion to recess?
Yes.
So moved.
You don't need a motion.
Don't need a motion?
Chairman can declare it.
We're in recess till the end of the public hearing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the new ones, because I have,
Good
I have these right here.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Moore. I'm Chairman of the Board of Ed. Welcome to the district meeting. And plan to, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the district meeting on the regional plan amendment for the regionalization plan for District 13. I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first is the reading of the call by the secretary.
Good evening. I will begin with reading the call of the meeting for this evening. Regional District 13, warning of special district meeting, Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. The electors of the towns of Durham and Middlefield, Connecticut are hereby warned and notified that a special district meeting will be held at the Coggins Regional High School Auditorium, 135 Pickett Lane, Durham, Connecticut, on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, at 7 p.m. for the following purposes. Item 1, to choose a moderator for said meeting. Item 2, to hold a public hearing to present and receive public comment on a proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization for Regional School District 13. A copy of the report on the proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization is on file and available for inspection at the Office of the Town Clerk of Durham, the Office of the Town Clerk of Middlefield, and on the district's website at www.rsd13ct.org. Following the special district meeting, the District Board of Education is expected to set the date for a referendum vote in Durham and Middlefield for approval or disapproval of the proposed amendment to the plan of regionalization, dated at Durham, Connecticut, this 8th day of July, 2021. Signed, Robert Moore, Chairman, Regional School District 13, Board of Education. The return of the call. Return is hereby made that the undersigned on the 30th day of July, 2021, caused to be posted on the public signposts in the towns of Durham and Middlefield a written warning by the Board of Education, and on the 30th day of July 2021, caused to be published in the Hartford Courant and the Town Times, newspapers having a circulation in the towns of Durham and Middlefield, a like warning of the public hearing on the amendment to the plan of regionalization to be held on the 11th day of August 2021. Signed, Robert Moore, Chairman, Regional District 13, Board of Education.
Thank you, Norm. The next action is the motion to elect a moderator. Victor, do you have a motion?
I move that Norm Hicks be moderator for this meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second?
As this is just like a town meeting, all of you get to vote on whether or not we select Norm or any other person to be the moderator. Are there any other nominations for moderator? If not, all those in favor of electing Norm Hicks as the moderator, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Raise your hand. Thank you. You're on.
Here we go. All right, thank you for that. And so we'll get started with the public hearing. And we'll begin, Chairman Moore has a prepared statement, and he will share that with us at this time. Bob?
Thank you, Norm. And thank you all for coming tonight. Following several building studies, enrollment studies, enrollment projections, focus groups, a false start on closing linemen a few years ago, and a strategic planning effort, the board voted to establish a single educational program in December of 2018. Following that, in January of 2019, it voted to establish a grade configuration that did not include John Lyman School in that configuration. The board, in anticipation of savings from the close of John Lyman School, planned to make some classroom improvements at Brewster School, including closing the portable units there. Our bond council determined that based on a recent state Supreme Court decision in another school district, that the current regionalization plan did not provide the authority for us to close the school. So in light of that, the board went out with an amendment to the regionalization plan in 2019 and 20, which gave the language in which gave us a broad authority to close schools. It also had amendments to for the election of Durham members of the Board of Education to follow the current charter in Durham. That referendum was defeated in January 20th, in January 2020, and it was rejected in both towns. The board began to consider an alternative to that, but was basically stopped because of COVID-19. So we did not take any further action on that regionalization plan amendment or the referendum, basically because we spent most of the year and a half dealing with COVID-19. During the budget process for this spring, we then began to look at the costs of running our school system. And it came up again that John Lyman, again, was a significant cost, and we looked back at and could be closed. So in light of that, we began another regionalization plan amendment, and this time the amendment is specific to close John Lyman School only, and that's the only thing in the language, and the language is back there on the table for more information. The amendment was proposed, it still has to go through this process. This is the next step of the process, is a public hearing, followed then by a referendum. After this hearing tonight, we will set the date for the referendum and deal with any changes that might be made as a result of this hearing. Following the hearing and the referendum, we will then move ahead with whatever the result is. If the result is approval of the closure of Lyman School, we will work with a community group to determine, one, the schedule for closure, and two, what will the grade configuration look like. The initial plan had a grade configuration of pre-K to 2 in Brewster and 3 to 4 in Memorial, and 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 in Strong. So we will look at both of those issues and importantly the schedule for closure. So we would like, many of our board members are here tonight to answer questions. We know we will have questions on the enrollment projections. We know we will have questions on the costs, and we will have questions on where we're going with the school system. As part of our planning, Dr. Shook will probably talk a little bit about his reimagining education, which is really where we're going with the whole school system and a single educational program. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Shook, who had worked on a thought exchange process that a number of you participated in, and he would like to show you the results of that.
Mind, Mr. Moderator, but take your place at the podium. Thank you. All right, give me just a second here. All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming out. I know it's a hot day, and there might be better things on your mind, but this is an important process, and it's a new process for me, being new to the district, being new to the state, and so I appreciate the board letting me be involved in the process. One of the things that I think is important for us is not only to understand maybe who supports this and who doesn't support it, but also kind of what are the underlying issues that frame and could perhaps even, as Chairman Moore said, alter the direction or the trajectory of where this may or may not go. So some of you may know, because you've been in the district longer than I have, we have this crowdsourcing tool that is pretty high tech called Thought Exchange. And if you participated, thank you for doing that. The more people that participate actively in the Thought Exchange, the better results we have to share. And again, what I'm going to show you is not going to tell us whether we should close John Lyman or not, but it is going to, I think, bring out some of the issues, many of which have been coming through phone calls and emails and conversations that we've been having. So let me start by saying, might be interesting to you, and if you can't see this, if you're sitting in the back, maybe you should move up a little bit, but if not, I'll kind of summarize for you. So we had 138 people participate. That's not a huge percentage of our population, but it's still significant. And those 138 people shared 110 thoughts. Now, again, I need to make sure you understand this, and that is, theoretically, one person could have shared 100 of those 110 thoughts. I don't think so, just based on what I've read, but that's the participation. But maybe what's more important are these star ratings, 2,751 ratings. So what that means is that these 138 participants, even if they didn't write their own thoughts related to the question that we posed, they did go out and they rated other thoughts, and that was important. Now, if I had like 3 hours, I could do some really nifty analytics here, because I've been doing them, but I'm not going to do that because this is a public hearing. We want to hear from you all. So let me just advance to the next slide here and show you, again, you probably can't read this one at all, but this kind of lets us know people's affiliation who did respond, and I guess the highlights are about half, about 48% identified themselves as parents or guardians of either current learners at John Lyman Elementary School or former. And then we had other percentages that kind of break down here. Probably the two highest of note, we had 23% of participants identify themselves as a parent and guardian in the district. So we would interpret that to mean no affiliation with having kids in Lyman presently or in the past. And then another 17% were employees of the district. And again, if you filled this out, you know you can only pick one. So if you're an employee and a parent, you had to pick the one that you felt like was most relevant to this conversation. But that gives you some sense of that. Now, we also asked participants where they lived. And so 35% are Middlefield, 53% are Durham, and 12% are neither. And you may ask, why are those people even filling this out? They're probably employees that do not live in district that still have, you know, a vested interest in the outcome, and I think rightfully so. And we did send it to our employees as well. So I think that was important. Maybe important, maybe not. I was tempted to ask how you plan to vote in the referendum, but I thought that would just maybe throw some people over the edge. But I was curious, at least at the time that this was published, who actually intended to vote in the referendum, regardless of how they would vote. And I think you can see there, if you can read that, 77% said they do plan to vote, 13% said they do not, and 10% are still deciding whether they're going to vote or not. So that's kind of the background. Now, you probably can't read this very well, but let me explain to you a little bit about how the star ratings work and how Thought Exchange works. So I mentioned there were 110, I believe, thoughts that were posted, and people can go in and rate stars from 1 to 5, 5 meaning I totally agree with that statement, or the question being posed I think is a good one, or 1 would be absolute disagreement, and of course, you know, you've done a million surveys online, 2, 3, 4 in between. And so what the software does is it calculates those that had the most highest agreement level. I guess that's the best way to say it. And so I've posted here the top 6. I want to first focus on the number 1, which has 4.1 stars, and that says small classroom sizes benefit everyone. And I think it's important to know not only that was number 1, but it was a clear number 1, 4.1 stars. So whether you think John Lyman should close or whether you think it should stay open, a lot of people think that small classroom sizes are good. And this says for everyone, so I don't think it's limited to to just our learners, maybe to our families, to our employees. And then I picked the next 5, which was like the next grouping at 3.7. So, 3 is kind of the average. So you have to use your own judgment. I'm not going to tell you how to think about what a 3.7 actually means, but I'll just read these for the benefit of those who cannot see them. The next one says, I like the smaller environment, allow students to feel a sense of community and belonging. The third one is, what will happen to the building if Lyman closes? We paid to maintain Corn for years, in capital letters if you can't read those. If we're going to pay for a building, we should use it. The next one says, student enrollment goes up and down. Will we have the funds we need to build another building in the future? The next one says, the staff at Lyman have provided an exceptional learning environment for both of my children. The rapport that current Lyman staff, maybe they meant to say have, it doesn't say that, is a crucial element to the positive learning climate of the school. And then the last one is, how will the closing of John Lyman School benefit the taxpayers in both towns? So again, these were not all the thoughts, these were the top ones. But the next thing I want to show you around that, and this one is a little technical, but I know some of you are technical people and you might like this. They have a pretty sophisticated artificial intelligence, and what it does is it tries to find issues within the thought exchange that actually divided people in significant ways. So on side A here, you have a group that says, John Lyman and the integrated program should remain open. It's an exceptional program and school. It's an attraction to our community. The people on side A rated that 5 stars. The people on side B, 1.1. So clear disagreement on that issue between the two. And then the other one says, do not close it, and it's 4.8 to 1. On the other side, side B, the comment is, close it. Enrollment is down. We have to adjust our footprint to reflect where we are and where we're headed. That group gave it 4.8 stars. The group on the other side, 1.1. Clear disagreement. And then the last one on the right side says, with so few students enrolled there, it makes most sense to close that building, reallocate resources, and expand programming. Again, 5 stars from side B, 1.3 stars from side A. That is not why I showed you this slide. You probably could have told me that without me even sharing that with you. What the artificial intelligence also does, which I think is very powerful, is for this and any other identified difference, it says, is there anything that those two groups kind of agree on? And it identified one. And it was actually one of the thoughts that I shared with you on a previous slide. And that is the question, how will the closing of John Lyman School benefit the taxpayers in both towns? So the interpretation would be, whether you think we should close the school or whether you think we should keep it open for the reasons stated, everybody wants to know what the taxpayers are going to reap from this decision. So I think that's important. And the next one, I'm not going to read all this to you because, again, it's a similar, one side wants to keep it open, one side wants to close it. But even within this reframing of a difference, the same thought shows up in the middle. The exact same one. How will the closing of John Lyman School benefit the taxpayers in both towns? So one of my interpretations of this is, if we don't do anything else tonight, we ought to try to explain to you how the closing of John Lyman School would benefit the taxpayers in both towns. And I would actually reframe that question respectfully to say, how will keeping John Lyman School open impact the taxpayers of both towns? Because I think people want to know, and you all deserve an answer, not just you that are here, but anybody who's interested and who's going to vote on this important decision. So that's really all I had to share at this point. If I can help answer questions going forward, I will certainly assist. But other than that, is that good?
Yep.
Sorry if that took too long. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Doug, and thank you, Bob, for those words. Are there any other board members that would care to make a statement before we move on to the public? I don't see any hand raising, so we can, at this point in the public hearing, it's time for the public part of the public hearing, and if you have a question or a comment that you would like to ask the superintendent, the board chair, any member of the board, we have people from our utilization committee here who are ready, willing, and able to answer your questions. So, having said that, if you have a question, please raise your hand. There's a microphone to my left, one to my right, or your right. And please also, for the record, state your name and, if you can, the town you're from. And I see a hand right here, so let's begin.
Hello, I am Heidi Pizzo. I live in Durham.
Excuse me, can you all hear what she's saying? Excellent.
Okay. So what I did notice this past week was we had board members post to Facebook, which has never happened before when it comes to this topic. Most importantly, the biggest thing I noticed was you have to vote no in one town and it does not pass. And that is correct. But nobody mentioned that in any of their posts. Second thing, I had the pleasure of going into the Middlefield Town Hall today, and I got to speak with the town clerk because I had to go in and pick up my son's birth certificate to register him for kindergarten. Do you know what the town clerk said? She said the number of houses in town being sold and new families coming in will affect our school district. How is that going to change this? We have so many, it's a big turnaround, so many new students are coming in, and your studies only go by your birth certificate, not your current students or incoming students. So I think that is going to have a big effect on our town in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Heidi. The answer to your first question is that it has to pass in both towns. So it needs a vote, positive vote in each town. Bob, do you want to answer the question on the enrollment issue?
Yeah, I'd like to address the question about the enrollment study. Thank you. I was just advised to remove my mask. The good thing about masks is it's done more for my personal appearance in public than anything else in the last 20 years. The enrollment projections that are done have been, the first projection was done back in 2012. It's been refreshed 3 times, the most recent one in November of 2019. It includes all kinds of information. It includes our population trends. So I just want to let everyone know this report is actually published online on Regional School District 13. I'd encourage you all to pull it down and to look at it. On slide 4, you'll see where it discusses population trends, and it shows that over the last 10 years or so that there's been a slight decline in overall population in the 2 communities, 1.1% in Middlefield, 2.8% in Durham. It also looks at the number of housing permits that are issued, because new housing actually has a huge effect on what you might see for enrollment. And the housing permits from 1999 to 2007, we ran between the 2 communities roughly 60 new housing permits per year. And between the last 5 years of the report up to 2019, we've been less than 10, with the last 2 years being 6 and 4 respectively. Housing sales, which Heidi just pointed out, can have an effect on the enrollment in the schools. Finally, by 2018, 2019, recovered to the pre-recession levels. So the report that's been generated is showing the churn rate of those houses in both towns at this point. Sorry about that. I should have shut that off earlier. So it does include the housing unit, new housing units being built, as well as housing unit sales. In addition to that, we show that the housing units, total number of housing units in both towns, have been relatively flat since 2012, because again, the new housing construction starts have been very low. So we're not seeing any growth there, or very little, but that is built into it. But the most important thing, and this is on slide 7 of the report if you look at it, is the number of students per household. And when you go back 10 years or more, there were roughly 50 students in every 100 households in the two towns. Move forward for the last 8 to 10 years, it's been flat at 32 students per household. So that means we only have 60% of the number of students per household that we had 10 to 15 years ago. So I'd really encourage you to look at this report because there's a lot in it. Then you go to slide 8, and it shows the birth rates. Back in 2008, there were 117 births per year in the towns of Middlefield and Durham. Over the last 5 years, we've averaged 77 births in the two towns, down from 117. So your birth rates in the towns are much lower. That information is also included in the model. So by the time you get to current enrollment this past year, and when you look at it compared to going back 16 years to 2004, 1 out of every 3 students in the school district is no longer in the district. 1 out of 3. And that's why this decline in enrollment is so disconcerting. Now, since 2012, when we started to see the decline, the board, and I wasn't on the board for all of that time, but the board was very concerned, and several times we've had the enrollment projections in the model redone and restudied, hoping to get results that say the enrollment is leveling out, that the enrollment is turning the corner, we're going back up, that this is just a cyclical swing. And every time, what comes back is the projections are pretty accurate, but we're running slightly under the midpoint of the projections. When they make these models, they tell you, here's the worst case, here's the best case, here's the most likely case. And in almost every grade and almost every year, we're running slightly lower than the midpoint, more towards the worst case. And we haven't seen that change. So now if you go and up to slide 9, this is where you can see the projections. And, I'm sorry, 9 is showing us the current year. And in 2019 to 2020, we had 122 people leave the district. And that is the largest single year-over-year decline that we'd ever seen. So that was just in the enrollment projections on slide 9. Then when we go to slide 9, I believe that also shows, is that the one that shows the forecast going forward? No, 17
I think it's
does.
17.
Yeah, if you jump to slide 17 then, and again, go to slide 17, this is where you actually will see the projections. And is that something that we have available to bring up on the screen?
I can bring it up.
Yeah, if you would, I'd really appreciate that, because I think this is the one. Actually, show slide 9 first, because I referenced that, and I think it would be very wise for people to take a look at that, and then we can look at slide 17, and then I'll be done, unless people have additional. So this is the one that shows where we had the highest point was back in, yep.
Is that it?
Yep, that's
9?
it right there. You got it.
You guys see that?
Yeah, it's hard to read the numbers, but that's the one that actually shows the rate of decline of the enrollment in our school district up to 2019. So that's how the decline has been. That is the actual historical data. So you see where it peaked and then it dropped. Now if you go to slide 17, and you're going to be flipping through the grade by grade and all of that, and we can talk about that, but if you go to 17, this is the actual forecast. So we just rolled through a lot of the other slides that show the birth rates and all of that. This is the slide that shows that where we are currently is at our 1,435 students. And 39 students, and where we will be, best case, all cases in the model show a continued decline in enrollment out to the year 2025, 2026, out in that way. So for the next 5 to 6 years, our overall enrollment in the school district is going to continue to decline. Then, depending on best case, worst case, or most probable case, in the best case, we level out and we start coming up. And by the end of the decade, 2029, 2030 school year, we'll be back to where we are today. It's going to take to the end of the decade to get where we are today. In the most probable case, we're going to be at about 1,300 students, which is slightly lower than where we are today. And in the worst case, we're down to roughly 1,200 students with the decline continuing. It hasn't bottomed out yet. So, as I said, each time we've had these models, and each time we have checked the projections against the model, hoping for hope that the model's wrong and we're getting better, the model has accurately predicted at the midpoint or just below the midpoint. So based on that, I think we would be going forward with the idea that we're really not going to see a huge uptick. Now, one thing that I know that a lot of people have pointed out, and we saw it in the surveys coming in, that people are very concerned about the enrollment in the PK to 2 grade level. And they're showing, if you read these surveys and you go, it would be, I believe, on slide 10 or 11, or maybe it even says it on slide 9. It shows that enrollment, there it is, yeah, I'm sorry.
You want 9 or 10?
Yeah, right there.
There? Okay.
Yeah, is that the one that, no, that one just shows, sorry. I'll have to find the slide number for you. I'll get it and I'll come back. But what it shows is that this a projected 10.3% increase in the enrollment in the PK to 2 by the end of the decade. So people are like, if we get 10% more kids in our elementary schools, my gosh, we're going to have to build a new school. What I'm not sure people realize is we run right now 21 classrooms with students in the PK to 2nd grade, 21 classrooms. And the average, the number of students in those classrooms run anywhere from 15 to 17 students. A 10% increase would mean if we brought all 21 of those classrooms up to 18 students, we would have accommodated the full 10%. We don't really like that. We don't think that's the way we want to go, or I shouldn't speak for the whole board. But the board has some guidelines. 18 is the top. We tend to run lower than the top. If we added 1 more classroom, we would accommodate the 10% with the 17 students. And what we just saw from the survey is people want lower classroom is better. So if we added 2 or 3, we'd be down in the 14, 15, 16 with that 10% increase. So all I'm saying is, as I look at these enrollment projections, and I would encourage everyone to download a copy of the report and familiarize yourself with all of the numbers, because I hear a lot of things going on. It's a very thorough report. I trust the science behind it. I trust that COVID has hit. Things may change. We do see some people moving out of the cities. They are going for the larger houses, more so to get larger, to have home offices because of the work from home, more so than upticks. But people are seeing kids moving back into the neighborhoods because we're back into the household churning. But that is built into the model. That is what we have seen for the last 100 years of people, neighborhoods grow old, and then they get replenished with youth again, and then they get old again, and they replenish with youth. It's a cycle that goes on and on. That is built into the model. So if anyone has any additional questions about enrollment, I'd be happy to answer them, or any of the other board members.
I have a question. Bob, there's so much information that goes into that. I took away from your comments the lesson that if you only look at housing starts and housing sales and don't look also at family sizes, you don't have the full picture.
Right,
And our survey includes family size
and birth rates.
and birth rates.
Yeah. So when you look at birth rates, housing starts, housing sales, yeah, you've got it. You got to put all of those factors into it.
I was just going to add one side comment that I do think is important also for people to understand, and in no way am I saying this is what we should do, but I think we also need to acknowledge that this is not a Durham Middlefield issue. This is also a state of Connecticut issue. If you look around at a lot of the towns, I believe Plymouth this school year is starting their new grade configuration with a school closure. There's been many, many towns that are in this same boat that are going down this path because of this decline in enrollment trend.
Yeah, you know, Christine, that's a great point because I didn't bring it up. Slide 14 is dedicated to estimates of migration, and this is the emigration of students in and out of the district, which is a factor of the immigration of people in and out of the state of Connecticut, which is a net out of Connecticut. So in addition to all of the other things that we discussed that go into this, the overall trends in emigration in and out of the district are built into it. And what you see is, at least the last 2 years in this study show a net minus 2% and minus 3%. You did have a couple of years where you had a plus 5%. So the average of that emigration in and out of the state is also built into this model. So that's another piece of the puzzle. So thank you for pointing that out, Christine.
I'd like to add, I have a map of Durham and Middlefield, the original district study committee, and it's a beautiful place we live in. We're blessed. Middlefield, Durham. We drive around, we see lots of open space. You think, wow, that could be 200 houses. No. Our towns have a huge amount of protected open space. So it's not going to be like we're going to see a lot of houses coming along. Obviously, Middlefield's very proactive with Powder Ridge. No 80 houses there. So I don't think we're going to see any housing boom at any of our lifetimes. We're blessed to have the open space. And I really think that for the sake of the kids, we need to streamline it. Get them all together right from the beginning. That's just my opinion.
We're back to you.
Okay, moving on. Is there a further comment or question from the audience? Yes, right here. I'm sorry, I can't see you, so I'll do my best.
Hi, I'm Yanina Ettinger, and I'm from Middlefield, and I'm just going to give you a quick background to see where I'm coming from. I've been coming to Board of Ed meetings, I figured out since 2013, spring 2013. My nephew was a kindergartner back then, and I had a student that was about to enter kindergarten. I have 6 children in the district. 2 of them are going to be at Strong this fall, an 8th grader and a 6th grader. Then I have 4 students that will be at John Lyman this fall. If you remember me from back then, if you've been on the board for a while, I used to bring my little kids and wear them with me when I'd come to board meetings. Because I didn't, now I have a live-in babysitter. Yes. So what I'm getting at is that John Lyman School, I've seen, my kids personally went through both Brewster and John Lyman, not all the way through, but my oldest was at Brewster for pre-K3 and pre-K4. And then she went to John Lyman as a kindergartner. And also, as of note, as a Middlefield resident, I live walking distance to John Lyman School, which I think has been a nice benefit for our family as well. So after hearing all of the information and all of the data that's been presented to us over the last 9 years, You are very, very, I want to say, dedicated to all of the information you've put out there, and I really appreciate all the hard work you guys put in. But there's a few questions I have. Even though my heart sees the John Lyman closing as something sad, my brain knows that this is where the district should be going. But I do have questions to address if we are heading in that direction to streamline our students and to help the taxpayers. One question I have is, from my experience, there have been multi-grade, student-led assemblies at John Lyman School, which people who have had children go there have said, that's a wonderful thing, please don't get rid of that. But as far as not having any experience at the other schools, having student-led assemblies, obviously last year because of COVID, that couldn't happen, but to see a kindergartner watching wide-eyed a third grader, a fourth grader running the assembly, I think is something that until you experience it, you don't really get. To have the students running the tech crew. And so what I'm asking, I guess what I'm kind of beating around the bush is that if you have a K through 2 school and a 3 through 5 school, which everyone will stream through, I just hope that you would address those concerns. Because having an assembly with everyone there is not what we were talking about at John Lyman. It's the modeling, the example setting, the leadership that is created within district. I had a student, one of my children needed special help, and in 4th grade, as you would, I don't know how else to put it, a reward, he got to go visit a classroom, and he chose to visit his kindergarten brother's classroom and have lunch and help out in the classroom as his reward for doing so well with whatever tasks he had to learn. So that kind of stuff, that little anecdotal stuff that I'm not sure everyone's aware of, that happens at a school, any school, it's not just John Lyman, any school that has a K through 4, K through 5, anything in that range configuration would be lost if you're just keeping pre-K through 2. Now I know 2nd graders can still model for kindergartners and preschoolers, but it's not going to be the same. And then a 5th grader and a 3rd grader, they're more closer to peers than I would think when you have a 4th grader and a kindergartner. So that was my first point I wanted to ask. And then I had a second question. So I don't know if I wait for the answer and then?
Go ahead.
All right, second question. And then also Memorial School. So like I said, I've now had 2 students go through Memorial School. And just wanted to let the board know that as a parent, while it's full of amazing, wonderful, good people, does not have that community feel, and I haven't been able to put my finger on exactly why. Maybe it's because students are only there for 1 to 3 years right now. Maybe it's something else, versus, because you have 5 years at Lyman to build that community, or maybe it has to do with communication. For example, I don't know if everyone realizes, but we get these Parent Square notices that come home and that let us know what's going on. And so, for example, my first year that my oldest was at Memorial, I didn't have a clear idea of how an event would go. Like, for example, there's a Halloween parade. Well, it's like, well, that was before COVID. Do we go in the building? Do we not go in the building? Is it, because I knew how it went at John Lyman, and everyone was aware, like, there's an assembly, and then the students come up. So it's little things like that. I feel like the communication helped people who just finished at John Lyman that moved on to Memorial feel like it wasn't at the same level. So I would love to address, if we are going to move that way, that it almost feels over-communicated at Memorial for families, so we know what's going on, because for some reason, it never felt like it was a hassle or over-communication, but I always felt informed of what the school was doing, what was happening. We could come in and see the weekly assemblies, see what the kids are learning, and I just would like you guys to think about that when you're modeling for the future. Okay? All right, thank you.
You want to try?
Okay.
Would anyone on the board like to comment on, I'm unclear if there were real questions in there, but would anybody like to comment?
I would comment, I was blessed to attend assemblies at John Lyman for 3 and 4 years every Friday. And some of the best assemblies were ones with which the children were modeling bad behavior. what not to do, what not to be like. Absolutely amazing. And I would like to see that continue. Yeah, Nina, thank you.
They were planning to do that, or it just happened?
Oh, that was the theme. Absolutely. A little reverse psychology.
All right.
Yeah, I think one of the important things as we've been looking at this is where are we going? And I think, as you know, we've started to implement many of those programs at different schools. Are they as equipped as Lyman was to do these things? Not yet. But I think one of the important things is to talk about where we're going in the future. And Dr. Shook has started a reimagining program. I think you might enjoy being part of that in the future, but maybe
She was invited.
Oh, you already invited?
Yeah.
Well,
So, thank you, Bob. And again, certainly, I've been here 7 months now, so I don't want to promise what the board and the staff and I cannot deliver. But I guess what I would throw out there is a framing of this, and if you came to my presentation in June or watched it, it's a little bit of a repeat. It's very clear to me beyond this whole, is the school going to stay open or closed issue being kind of on everyone's minds, diversity of opinions, as we went over earlier. The other thing that came out very, very strongly, whether I was talking to parents or learners who had been through the integrated day program and the HOT program, was just how a positive experience that was for them educationally, and some would even take it as far to say in life, like life beyond high school. And so I can understand why people would be concerned, as am I, if closing the school meant kind of doing away with that. Unfortunately, the other thing that I reported to the board that I had discovered, and you know, I'm not pointing fingers. It's easy to point fingers at Common Core standards or COVID-19 or any of these things. But for whatever reason, over the last 5 to 6 years or so, what was kind of the core of HOT and ID at John Lyman has been kind of scaled back. And it really is, again, hopefully I'm not overstating this, maybe a shadow of its former self. And so a lot of what we've heard in the positive is not even what is necessarily happening there in current times, but what happened there in past. But I bring this up to say it's important that we latch onto that, to Bob's point. And I guess the opportunity I see for us, if people like you are willing to go with us on this journey, and many others, because I can't make this happen myself, is if we are willing to ask ourselves, should our kids be going to school the way that we went to school? Unless some of you went to John Lyman out there or some other school like that. Or at all levels, should we be thinking of a more transformed, learner-centered experience? Now, we don't have time tonight for me to get into this, and Bob probably didn't want me to. But I guess what I would say, and what I have said, and how I feel very, very passionately, is that if we can get this learner-centered movement off the ground, we will tap into some of that great expertise, and not just expertise, because it isn't just about teaching and learning. It's about a mindset, and it is about empowering young people at all ages, not just to do assemblies and things that maybe were the hallmark of HOT and ID, but other things that are very different than the way we do school now. And I don't mean just we here in Regional School District 13, where most schools do that. So this is kind of more of a movement. And so not to disagree with what Bob said earlier, because again, it was the board's thing, but even when I interviewed for this job and the board talked about a single program, I don't view learner-centered education as a program. It is more of a mindset and just a different way of approaching education, but one that I feel very passionately about, as you can probably tell. He's not going to let me talk anymore tonight.
Yeah, you can talk all you want.
Is better equipping our learners for when they leave us, because our current system, and then I'll shut up, was designed for the industrial age, and it was designed to produce certain select kids and to produce primarily workers on assembly lines. And those jobs have not existed for a generation plus, but we're still educating in the same way. So what I'm talking about is not going to change overnight, but to Bob's point, we have started engaging with some people, some of you, about where we might go with this. And so, again, this is not me promising you that if you vote to close John Lyman, everything that happened at John Lyman is going to necessarily happen at Brewster and Memorial at our other schools. But I can give you my promise, as long as I'm here and these folks keep me employed gainfully, I'm going to be pushing for that. And I would invite any of you that feel that way to join us in that journey. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
I was just going to add, I think some of the points that you bring up are honestly one of the reasons why I want our kids to be together. Because I don't want, my kids went to Brewster. I mean, to me, like, that's so sad. Now, we were just talking how they're going to Memorial next year. But, like, I don't want just my kids to experience a music festival because that's part of the Brewster community. And just your kids to experience an assembly because that's part of the John Lyman community. Like, to me, it should be all of our kindergartners should have a piece of that. All the first graders should, all the second graders should. So why should it be separate? And I think, maybe being a bit of the optimist here, like, why can't we build something like that? And I think that's what, Dr. Shook will accomplish.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
I do.
Good.
I would just like to thank you for coming to our meetings all those years. Norm and I think are the only ones who've really experienced the full breadth of your contributions to the process. And to encourage you, the issue, there are many complex issues that feed into the decisions about how to divide grades and which grades to put in each building. And all of them have clear disadvantages. You've pointed out the obvious one about the current thing. Study buddies is another, right? There are important elements of what I understand the John Lyman experience to be. And mind you, when I went to school, it was on the Jersey Shore, and we still used chalk in the classroom. The Board of Ed had just taken away our stone tablets. It's important that you and all parents continue to give feedback and to participate in the decisions that are made, because there's no one great winning solution. No matter how we divide the grades up or how many buildings we have, there are going to be advantages and disadvantages to each. And the challenge for all of us is to, with any configuration, to not lose sight of the good things that we want and to find ways to implement them no matter how the buildings are arranged.
Okay, thank you all, and we'll go to the next question. Right here. Step right up.
Oh, I hate this. Hi, Mary Johnson, Middlefield, and I just, before I start with my actual questions, two things. Doctor, our new superintendent, I would love to know more about this new programming that you're bringing in. I've been saying for 40 years, our education system needs to bring us into the modern age. And I attended District 13 schools, well, before District 13 schools, because I went to Center School, John Lyman, and isn't walking lovely? I used to go home, 3rd and 4th grade, make my own lunch every day, except on Mondays when they brought hot dogs for lunch. You could buy a hot dog meal for $1. You got a hot dog, an apple, and a little bag of chips. So that was like the real treat. They wouldn't allow that today. They can't even cross the street, but we did that, and it was cool. Anyways, my first, I guess, comment is this August 11th hearing. There are so few people in the audience tonight, and I really feel it's a disservice to both towns to schedule this in the middle of vacations and to have delayed this hearing a few weeks, either the week before Labor Day or the week after, when school's back in session. We would have a packed auditorium, I feel. So just I guess a general comment, The next thing, the school. If John Lyman, according to the paper and your own information, if the school were to remain open, it says that there is $2.8 million in needed repairs immediately. Why are there that much in repairs needed? And this seems to be a trend with the school board. When the center school was finally turned back to the town of Middlefield, it needed a ton of work. The same thing's happening now with the Corn School and going to happen again with the John Lyman School. And it seems to me, or it feels like, when you have decided that we might be closing the school, you just stop taking care of the buildings. It's really kind of wasteful of our tax dollars. I know we did the vote, and a lot of us thought it was settled and John Lyman was going to remain open. And I know you've been doing your studies, but again, back to Brewster. It was stated this evening, Brewster's going to need improvements done. How much is that going to cost? What about the septic system? It's a lot of wetlands over there. The soils are really not suitable for a big septic system. And what about the water? I don't know about the water over there, but, you know, so that's a big cost that you're going to ask us to absorb. I just really wonder about that. You know, we've already talked a little bit about property values. I foresee property values going down in Middlefield once that elementary school does close, and the tax burden not going down significantly with that, you know. And I know things change and the projections change, but it seems like not that long ago they were talking about we might need another new school, you know, and now it's, no, we don't, we're, you know. So sometimes it seems like you're not really sure where we're going with it. I mean, I don't know what population the Brewster School can hold, because I didn't go to Brewster School. As I said, I went to Center School, John Lyman, then to Memorial School, and finally here to Coggins. And it's been a long time since I graduated. That's all I can say, but I haven't decided which way really I'm going to vote on this, but I just really feel that when the school district was formed and it was a hot topic, I was a child, yes, but I remember it going on, and I was pretty precocious back then when these things were going on. As I said, I used to go home in 3rd and 4th grade and make my own lunch by myself to an empty home. So 5th grade, I would take the bus to Boston, see my sister in she was in nursing school. You know, today, I don't think there's any parent in either town that would put a 5th grade student on Greyhound bus to go to Boston. You know, probably my mother would get arrested today, right?
Depends if you like the kid.
Well, you know, it was a different world. There's no doubt about it. That was a different time. But I just worried about plans are really kind of in flux, and, you know, you make plans and you spend our money. We have very little control over the school budget. We can vote it up, we can vote it down. You know, you guys are the ones setting the budgets and making a lot of these decisions that, you know, and then, you know, board representation. When the school district was started, it was equal representation, and now it's definitely not equal representation. And it just feels like Durham is now going to control 71% of Middlefield's budget. And that's a lot of money for us to not have control over. Thank you very much.
I can start. The hearing date was, because we're planning to have this on the election day, we had to have it to the referendum date had to be selected and into the town clerk by September 2nd. So that's the reason why, you know, we'd love to have it in when school was back in September, but that's why we're having it now. But you can write comments and we can answer questions right up to February 2nd.
One more thing.
November 2nd, excuse me.
Mr. Moore,
Yeah.
I would suggest that the referendum question be placed on the November ballot, where we'll have a better chance of more people actually coming out and voting. Our turnout for school budget referendum is abysmal, but hopefully municipal election will be better.
Hopefully that's our intent, but in order to be there, we had to have the hearing now so we could be on the board, on the public record with the town clerk by September 2nd. In terms of some of the cost issues, Kim, do you want to try any of those?
So to address the capital needs, of John Lyman, the 2.8 emergent capital needs. There's no easy way to say this or sugar-coated way. It just hasn't been saved for. The capital plan in the district, that's the easy part to cut out of a budget every year instead of programming and staff members. And then that continues a trend, and then you get yourself in a position where you're playing catch-up. That is partially rectified with the $6.9 million bonding authorization that was done a couple years ago, but frankly, it should have been $14 million. But that would have created a vast increase in taxes, and we felt the palatable amount. This went through committee, it went through utilization, it went through finance committee, it had public input, it had town input. That 6.9 would cover those systems that were past their useful life. Now, as we do that, more systems are becoming at their useful life, which I just spoke about the chiller here at the high school earlier. Yes, we are playing catch up. We did do a large energy project recently, and that took care of $4 million worth of our improvements. And so that was a help too. So we're getting there. Does Brewster have needs? Absolutely, the whole district does. In terms of saving money by closing a building, you will save the funds for running the building that can be then redirected to potentially an addition at Brewster if it's needed. Determined by referendum and public input. That money would be geared towards creating a dynamic, great pre-K2 school, as opposed to maintaining two mediocre buildings. And that's the financial piece on my side is that money better spent in making a dynamic building and keeping up with your upkeep, saving for future capital needs, than just paying the lights and the heat and the landscaping in other buildings.
Could I also respond?
Bob?
Go ahead, Bob.
Oh, sure. One thing on the $2.8 million as well. Not sure if you're all aware, but by state statute, a school district, regional school district, is not allowed to reserve more than 1%?
It was 1, most recently changed to 2 this year.
So now it's 2% of our operating budget. That's all we're limited to, which is about $600,000. When you look at a school district with 5 buildings such as we have and all of the athletic facilities and everything else, we probably need to be reserving somewhere north of $1 million to $2 million a year so that we could avoid having to go out for bonding. But as it sits, we're not allowed statutorily to reserve those funds. So what does it mean? It means you wait till the equipment is ready to be replaced, and then you come to the taxpayers and say, we need bonding of X million dollars to do these repairs over the next 2 years. We just did that. We got $6 million a year or two ago, just tonight. A portion of that went out for bonding to replace the equipment. And that's the cycle we're in. Now, this past Saturday, after the swearing in of 5 new volunteer firefighters in Middlefield, I had the occasion to talk to Mike Quinn at length, who's our representative up in the House in Hartford, and I told him about this very issue, and I told him, you need to work with Matt Ritter to get it on our agenda. And when Matt Ritter was at one of our Board of Education meetings recently, I had brought the issue up directly to him. Matt is the Speaker of the House of Representatives up in Hartford. So these are the types of things, legislative changes, we need in Hartford in order for us as a school district to properly budget the capital requirements over time. So Mary, that's really why we ended up where we ended up with all of these buildings, and that's how we're going to continue until we get some legislative changes. So that's what I'd like to add to that.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Step right up. There's a mic right here.
Hi, good evening. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ryan Walsh, and I live in Middlefield. Okay, so I want to hit on two of the themes from the conversation we've had so far. So we'll talk first the two tracks going to one track. Just a couple things on my mind. I think this is a great opportunity for the board, for our new superintendent, and for all the parents of the students to kind of get past where we came from. There was a lot of emotion in moving from a two track to a one track. I know personally I felt like there was a transparency issue when the survey came out. There was only one option for one track, and there were two options for a two track, and that watered down the percentages at the end, and I saw that coming a mile away. But that's past us right now. I think Yannick had some great comments. What I think we should be doing is trying to make our district unique, and that was one of the cool things about the two-track program when we moved to the town, and we've got a great opportunity. There's a great opportunity to use some of these neat internet tools to engage our alumni from both tracks, both the hot and the traditional track, and the parents and the students. And I think this period is a wonderful opportunity to come out of it and have a program that we can all be proud of, that takes not only our past but our future, embraces it, and tries to make this district unique, and to try to keep it something special that might attract families to come to the school. Personally, I would love to participate in that. Dollars and cents, the other comment here. We are in the middle of a pandemic. We're also in the middle of a demographic shift and a housing boom. And I question whether this is the right time to make a one-time decision to close the school. I think the data that you shared was great, but it doesn't factor in this pandemic. We are in the middle of a boom. My street alone, my two neighbors have moved out. I got one with two kids, young kids. The other one's house is on the market, and they're having tours. 33% year-over-year increase in home sales in Middlesex County. That's a fact. So I question whether this is the right time to close a school, regardless of one or two track programs, because of the cost to expand or build a new school. And I think that cost is substantially greater than the investment we need to make to keep John Lyman going for another couple of years. You can read in the news, our neighbors in Hamden, they're $6 million over budget for their middle school expansion. It's a $17 million expansion, started out as $11 million. So my recommendation, and I don't plan on voting for closure of John Lyman, is that we take some time, take the year, let this pandemic peter out, let the demographic shift happen, do another snap of the line of the data, because it's great. Do that, and in parallel, start this committee to go figure out how to make our district the best district in the state, and come out stronger after this pandemic's over. That's my recommendation. Thanks. Thanks for hearing me.
Can I say something?
Any comments from the board?
Yeah, you.
Well, yeah, I have one, but.
Let Bob go first. You want me to go first?
Doesn't matter.
All right, I just want to say quickly to the timing issue, and if our communication was not clear on this, the question in front of the voters of the two towns is, are they giving this Board of Education permission to close John Lyman? There has been no discussion that I'm aware of on this board since I've been here around this issue, and we've been talking about it since I've got here, and I think since long before, about when exactly that would happen. And so one of the things, to the previous point, is that a vote for yes does not guarantee, A, that the school will close, or B, when it will close. Now, I think the answer to A is it will, because all 10 of the board members unanimously voted to put this on there, so I think that is the board's intent. But I think the timing of that decision is certainly up for discussion, and so I just throw that out there.
Bob?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments on the financing. So John Lyman School, to operate it in a given year, is $5.5 million in operating expense in total. Should the school close, we can't eliminate all 5.5 million because we still need to run all the classrooms. The teachers will be transferred over, all of the materials and supplies necessary to provide the education. But what we would realize is roughly $1.5 million a year in savings. Now, if you take $1.5 million, the total amount, and don't provide any savings back to the taxpayers, we could bond $30 million in expense. And with state reimbursement, that means we could possibly invest as much as $60 million into improvements of buildings or expansions of buildings. Now, we have had several plans that we looked at in the run-up to the last referendum where we had A through D, and we had a B number 2 and a B number 1. We had all different configurations, many of which included expanding the existing buildings, the most expensive of which is roughly the same cost of putting in the repairs to John Lyman, which wouldn't provide any expansion and any of the other cost savings. So we could essentially do these expansions of the existing school. We could add 6 classrooms to Brewster. I think the number I saw was, well, it was an older estimate, so I don't want to throw out any estimates on the cost, but it was less than half of what it's cost to repair John Lyman. We could add 8 classrooms to Brewster, plus a brand new cafeteria and some additional improvements to the athletic facilities for a number that was still slightly below John Lyman. And in addition, we wanted to make some changes to Strong School to improve the classrooms and the infrastructure to recognize some of the technological changes coming forward, and to add additional classroom space at Middlefield Memorial School. So those were all being contemplated. At this point in time, those decisions haven't been made, and we do have a utilization committee, so I'm going to put in my plug here. Among the many committees that the Board of Education has, Utilization Committee is one that really looks at these different alternatives, and we try to make a certain number of recommendations, which we will then be working with the public, you guys, to give us guidance as to which do you think is the most appropriate, how we should move forward. But those committees, we have our committees open to members of the public to serve on the committees. So if any of you would like to serve on any of the committees of the Board of Education, just approach Bob Moore or Doug Shook, and they'll bring it to the board to vote to add you to the committee, and we'll have folks helping us out. So, and I think that's very important. So if you have an idea of what you'd like to see, or you'd like to help us out, because right now you've got a group of 10 volunteers that have probably put in excess of 1,000 hours working on just this one topic. We could certainly use the help, and we certainly look for the input. Thought Exchange is another great tool that we can use to help align how we want the schools to look, etc. So all I'm saying is we could do the improvements to the existing schools. We could add the additional classroom space as required and still come through with the cost savings that would allow us to either lower taxes or add additional programming to our schools. Throw all that in with the work Doug is doing on reimagining education. I participated in the first series of that. And you start to look and you say, hey, instead of just offering AP Physics and AP Bio, hey, we could offer AP Marine Biology through a partnership with the University of Oregon and do it remotely. And we can be offering that to our students. We talked about, is the school going to remain from 8 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, or is it going to go from 8 in the morning till 6 o'clock at night? And how can we work to engage other members of the community? So Ryan, a lot what you said about engaging the alumni and engaging the talent in the community, that's all being discussed right now in the Reimagining Education. And I really appreciate you joining dug in that journey because it's really a fantastic program, and anybody else that's interested should also sign up. So I put in my plug for the Reimagining Education, which I
Thank
think
you.
is critical, and I also put in the plug that we could use help if any of you want to join our committees. So thank you.
And we have another speaker.
I'm Johansson Durham. We have spent a lot of time and many hours, and it wasn't just contemporary, it was ID, it was people also from the town, both towns, meeting, and it was definitely about bringing these kids together and making the best of both of these districts, or the programs, and making one school district that everybody would want to come to. Just like John Lyman is one of the reasons why people did come, but for the citizen to be the reason why everyone wants to come. But the common theme from hours and hours of all of this was that these kids need to be together from the start, from kindergarten on. However that might be, by either adding on to Brewster at some point, but we also have to remember, yes, COVID has happened, people are moving in, but building is also, and all of the costs are costing more. I have a friend who was going to build a house that's now costing $80,000 more because of building materials going up. So all of these costs that we have about fixing Lyman and things that are going, might not be the $2.8 million. It could be more because of the cost of COVID stuff. And also things are out of date or they can't get them. So the wait for time for all of this stuff is also on the problem of all of this. And this all has to be into the factor of these kids need the best education and the best of both of everything that's going on in this district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hello, I'm Gwen Hutter. I moved from Virginia here. I had, at that time, a kindergartner and I had 1-year-olds, and now a 6th grader and a 2nd grader. I heard you, I want to say thank you for being board members. I know it's tireless hours and it's all volunteer, so we're grateful. And I heard you say that in 2019 you decided to get rid of the ID program, and then, 2018 is single education program, and 2019 go to one curriculum, and then Mr. Y went on to say, that was our biggest jump of loss of people. Yeah, because you lost the draw. When I would sit at the corn booth with the John Lyman families, I would meet people who moved from different people all over the state. Again, I moved from Virginia because of Lyman. My neighbors, everybody loved that school. And I'm happy to hear this vision of being a great community and being forward thinkers. I've been a teacher 17 years. I've been saying it the whole time. We all say it. What are we going to do? Are we going to have a high school that gets these, that actually draws people? Because a lot of my neighbors left. A lot of the kids in my son's 6th grade class have left. 4th, 5th, as soon as 2019 hit, when they said John Lyman's closed, peace. They don't love our middle school. They don't love our high school. What are we going to do to get people here? We're going to have a high school that has, that when you graduate from high school, you can have your associate's degree. Are we going to have a STEM program? Are we going to have, I don't know, an IT program? What is going to be the draw to make people come here? And not just live here, but keep their kids in our schools. Because, like I said, a lot of my son's friends are going to private schools already. I mean, your data said the biggest jump was in 2019. People left, but people stayed in the town or are paying for private schools. So what are we going to do? I mean, the ID program's gone. John Lyman fiscally makes sense to close. But if we want that intangible spirit of strong learners, motivated learners, unique individual education, what program is going to give us that? I'd be willing to serve on a committee. I've been a teacher for 16 years. I mean, but I don't feel that there's one clear mission that would have people coming here other than people have always said, oh, Middlefield's great schools. Right, but what is that central theme? What is that drive? Is it a sports education? What is it? I don't know. So I think that's what we need to be thinking about. I mean, yes, this is a meeting about Lyman, and will it stay open? I mean, maybe it won't because we're waiting to see about what happened with the change of the recent boom of population, during boom, I don't know. But, we need to be clear, we need to come together, right? We all want our kids to be successful, and we all want them here. We don't want our friends or neighbors going to private school or leaving. We want our neighbors here. So I'm eager, I guess, to work with you and come up with solutions with you. Gwen Hutter, thank you.
Thank you very much. We want Regional Schools District 13 to be the best in the state. We want it to attract people to come to Connecticut, to come to Durham. One of the things we did to start that process is hire a superintendent also from Virginia. And when we looked, and the board looked at the qualifications, the reimagining education was a driving condition that we were looking for. He can't do this with his own imagination, with his own help. He needs us 10, and he needs all of you. I think there's no more desired goal for everyone on this board is to make our school the best place. I personally cannot stand the fact that we lose 10 to 20% of our 8th graders to private school. It's very hard to see them go, to neighboring schools, and what can we do to keep them here? And I think that's a critical component of where we're going. And does that affect way down to the pre-K to 2? Maybe, hopefully, that the programs that we begin with the youth they stay together as a team, as a group, and want to play together and learn together all through their school district here. And hopefully, we're working on it. We need you. Doug's pushing hard. Andrew, did you want to say anything? I know that.
Yeah, I would just say that, I think one of the motivating factors also for us kind of pushing for closing of John Lyman School is to free up the financial resources to be able to do things like have STEM programs and make the school district more attractive. But without that ability to be flexible in our budget, when we're always up against per pupil student expenditures and getting a lot from the taxpayers from that standpoint. And the reason why we're at that point is because we have a lot of inefficiencies in our system right now. And we need to get those inefficiencies out of our system so that we can then dedicate the resources to creating a very dynamic district with lots of cool programming, and make it attractable to move into the district. You're not paying a ton in taxes, but you're getting a great school district. That's how you get people to move in. But we need to have that flexibility, and it starts with closing a school to give us that financial means.
Okay, and we have another speaker in the queue.
I'm just going to duck. My name is Kelly Ainworth. I'm in Durham, 41 Hemlock Court. I'm a parent of 3 children in district. Also professionally, I work as Associate Director of Space Planning at Yale Medicine, so I live every day the impact that buildings have on budgets. I understand that. My 3 children also were and are highly benefiting from the ID program at Lyman. So I actually speak today not urging anyone to change their mind or make a decision either way. I think my sentiments are pretty much where Mr. Walsh was. What I do ask is, if the referendum does pass in November, please consider taking the time for a thoughtful transition. Through my discussions with board members, with leadership in district, there's a lot of great ideas, but there's really not a plan in place yet for what that transition looks like. And someone spoke before about the passion that the community at John Lyman has. I think there's still a lot of fear. So asking to vote on something without a plan is scary for a lot of people. If we rush a transition, our learners and our teachers have had a rough year. So we really need to be mindful about it. I also know that right now, even if we decided today that this was the last year that Lyman was open, there's really no way to make building modifications by next school year. From a budget perspective, from a planning perspective, honestly, construction is at a standstill right now. So I just ask that we do it thoughtfully. I love the enthusiasm. I love the idea of reimagining the education in our system, but let's just do it the right way. What I would like to ask, and I know I emailed the board members about, is there not an option to put on the referendum a no earlier than date, so that those of us that want to see a plan, that work can start? There's, I think there's a way for a win-win around this. I think it involves a little bit of creativity. We know that there's interest in the John Lyman building. I know there's financial incentive for us to move quickly on this. But I think with some creative contract language and maybe a tweak to the referendum with a no earlier than date, I think you would have my vote to do that. I think you would have a lot of others. But currently right now, with a lot of great ideas and no plan, I plan to vote no. Again, if I knew that we had time to really do this the right way, the space planner in me would be ready to do this, and the parent in me. So I thank you all for your service. I've listened and come to these for a long time, and I know how much work has gone into it. I want to see us move in the right direction. I just really want to see us do it based on what our students need and not be rushed by the finances. Let's get it done, but let's get it done the right way. Thank you.
Bob?
Thank you, Kelly. The change in the language of the referendum would force us to start all over again and go back through another public hearing and all that stuff. The board, however, can decide a schedule and can commit to, by a vote of the board, to a schedule that would could occur before the referendum, so that you would know if there was a longer schedule, that we would have that in place before the referendum. So we could do that.
And with your space planning, we can sign you up for the utilization committee.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, no, it's
Welcome.
She's already on our building committee.
I would like her to be part of reimagining.
And you want her part of the
I do.
You got her. Sure.
But she's already on our building committee, which is meeting next week.
Good.
All right, are there further comments in the back?
Hi, I'm Heidi Johnson. I'm from Durham. I just want to provide a little bit of context, and people have touched on this a little bit, but every year that I come to these meetings, there are, or every 2 years, every 3 years, there are more people who come online, more parents, and I think that's excellent. But I think what gets lost is that some of us have attended workshops toward this end for years. And so this has not been rushed, in my opinion, and what it has done is prevented us from talking about other things. Basically, what I've observed is that since Corn closed, a lot of contemporary parents who felt like that decision didn't include them have kind of gone offline. So the cohort of contemporary strong school parents is just not here. I mean, there are a few of us here, but there just have not been a lot of us here since that time. And it's been really difficult to try and bring people back into the fold when people either feel that this is a foregone conclusion or feel that all of the time has been sucked into this decision making. And so I think it's a shame, because I would have liked to see some discussion around what's going on at Strong School, what's going on at the high school, why we're not retaining students at the high school. Frankly, my kids have another option, but it breaks my heart to leave here. It does. I want them to go to school with their peers. I want them to stay here where I know a lot of parents and teachers. And it's frustrating that there was Portrait of the Graduate, there were workshops in the library talking about the two tracks and the pros and the cons of the two tracks. So this has been ongoing for quite some time. And I just wanted to provide that context because, again, as this goes on, we constantly have people online and at these meetings who are of the opinion that this is a process that's being rushed. And again, this is something that has been talked about and contemplated through the population studies since my child, who is now going into the 8th grade, was entering kindergarten. So I think if we could, of course, continue the dialogue, but we have to move toward making a decision. There has to be, we cannot constantly wait for more community involvement and more data. I mean, I think we've done that. I have been here and seen it. So, I mean, I think we can certainly take the best aspects of the two programs and continue to combine those, but I think in terms of closing the building, this is not a new discussion, and the data has been there, and the work and the time has been there on your part and on the community's part. So, and I thank you for that. I appreciate it. I've seen it. Thank you.
Any further comments?
Hi, I'm Cheryl Pizzo from Middlefield. As many of you know, I've been at most of these meetings. I'm a big proponent to keep the school, John Lyman School in Middlefield. I see that right now you have a problem in that you're stuck. You had a vote. It was very definitive. I mean, it wasn't even close that people wanted to keep that school. And so now I think, you know, you're coming back and you're asking them to vote again. You're asking for their input. You say we want the parents' input, but they already gave it. And they gave it loud and clear that they want to keep the school open. So what I think you're missing is you don't have Plan B. How do you make that work? How do you take your numbers and make it work? All we hear is that we have to do this, because if we don't do this, the numbers don't work. But if the people who you answer to, right, the taxpayers, are telling you, we'd like you to make it work, I would say that perhaps you should go back to the drawing board. And perhaps if you create more equity in the programs so that you're not creating, you know, this animosity, if you will. I mean, I think that people are just feeling like, why, you want to talk about voter apathy? Why should people come and vote? If this is defeated again, are you going to go back again and ask people to vote? You're not listening. I think it's important that you listen. I think it's important that you look for ways to compromise, come up with a different plan, make people happy. They're not happy because they're not voting with you. If they agreed with you, when we had that referendum, you would have gotten the green light. You did not get the green light. So I ask you, please, to go back to the drawing board and look at how you can make this work so that everyone can benefit. Thank you.
Bob, how many votes, how many people came out and voted? I don't think it was a particularly huge turnout, if I remember correctly. I'm just curious. I'll see if I can find it.
It was. It was at least, it was probably 20 to 25% of the total population of the town.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's
But
kind
I
of,
mean, it is a big number.
yeah, it was, I think that would be kind of a little bit of my response of, I can't, as a board member, look at the votes that came out with such a low turnout as that being the final word for me, at least. I want to hear from people, and I think, you know, because we've had a very good communication plan, you know, I stand behind the vote in November, potentially November.
So
She can come back.
I just wanted to make one comment. She can come back. When we have a referendum, people come to vote, and you listen. Hear you at home.
you need to,
People are watching it live. Your point is well taken about perhaps you didn't get the broadest voter segment that you're looking for. But when you have a referendum, it's probably half of that. And then you still have to abide by whether it goes up or down. That's just the way it goes. So to say that you can't listen because 25% of the voters came out, I was thrilled if it's 25%. So it's just case in point. Thank you, and thank you for all your hard work.
Okay, next speaker.
Hi, I'm Amanda Galuli. I'm from Durham. I wanted to address that if you are going to move forward with closing Lyman, what is your plan for how those students are going to be placed at Brewster Memorial? There's currently 10 classrooms at Lyman this year at over 200 kids. If you're going to close Lyman next year, where are those 10 classes and 200 kids going to be going? Are you adding 10 classes? And does that mean that the staff members from Lyman are coming to Brewster and Memorial? Also, your FAQ that you put out said that the PK2 enrollment is expected to increase by 10% by 2024. That means there'll be over 300 new kids between Lyman and the new enrollment that would be split between Brewster Memorial in the next 3 years. What is the plan to accommodate that over 300 students?
Bob, did you want to, you had started to answer that question before, do you want to work on it?
Well, with the 10% enrollment increase, given the total number of classrooms we have, because when you're talking about the PK to 2, you're talking about increasing 1 to 2 students per class would accommodate the 10% increase. That's
But
what
that
it would take.
doesn't take into accommodation the 250 kids from Lyman.
No, it does. It's the entire PK to 2 enrollment right now is housed in 21 classes. And its average is 16.4 students per classroom between the two schools. If we increase the enrollment to 17 students in 21 classes, it's the entire enrollment of the PK2.
What about the Lyman kids? Where are they being factored?
That they're in the PK to 2. That's what I'm
But
saying.
there's currently 10 Lyman classes.
So the
There's
intent.
21
Hold on.
total between Brewster and Lyman.
Right, so if you take those 10 away at Lyman, those kids have to go into an existing classroom or you have to create new ones.
Right,
That's what I'm asking.
and the
You're talking
intent was
physical
always to
classrooms?
create.
You're talking physical classrooms.
Yeah, the intent was always to create new classrooms at Brewster.
So you have
it was
room to
always
create
there.
10 new classrooms?
All we needed was 6 new classrooms at Brewster. That was what we needed from a projection standpoint. The other would be accommodated through movement into Memorial. And by those 2 numbers, we'd have enough to fit everyone. That's the numbers we've run in the past.
And there's room to add 6 new classrooms to Memorial, or to Brewster?
We would have to build, you would have to build the 6 new classrooms.
But we don't have time to build 6 new classrooms before these new kids come from Lyman.
In 1 year? Yeah, I would agree. They have to go somewhere else for 1 year.
Exactly. Thank you.
Also part of the FAQ is that over the next several months, we want to talk about where that grade configuration will look like, how would we accommodate the students. We've had a variety of proposals of pre-K at the high school where it used to be years ago, moving some of those classrooms around like that. And there's a proposal at one time was 8th grade at the high school, which has been opposed pretty strongly in our past surveys. But there's another, in the short term, there could be space. but we need to go and look at where that space is. But again, you know, that's part of more of a community decision as we get going and you know, as we look at it over this fall.
All right, a board member is whispering to me. Can I?
You may.
So, we did look at, because the question came up, I can't remember if it's from one of you all or from one of the board members, maybe in response to some of the questions that were out there. If we were to, a year from now, which again, I think you guys heard me say maybe a year from now is not the best time to do this, but let's just say that that's what people wanted to do. If we were going to try to move all of K1 and 2 to Brewster without expanding the campus, what would that kind of look like? And what it looks like is that we could not do that if we keep the 2 preschool classes there. If we were willing to move them to the high school or another campus, which has been done here in other places, again, not saying that's what we should do, but if we were willing to do that, we could fit what we project for all the K1 and 2 to fit into Brewster. Again, that'd be pretty tight, and so again, I'm not saying I recommend that, but that was the question, and I think that's what you wanted me to say, correct?
Yeah, just let you know, because these things have been studied. You know, like when the suggestion of PK going to the high school was brought up at one point, I was curious as to, well, do we even have bathrooms suitably sized for PK at the high school? And apparently, we used to run PK at the high school, and it allowed students in high school that wanted a career in early childhood development to actually work with those students, and that was done historically. I don't know that that's the right way to go. I don't think we need to. I don't want to rush the timing of when we make the decision. I think Bob said earlier, we're not sure, you know, when the school would close, and to Andrew's point, we would probably want to do construction before we closed. So there were those issues as well. So I think the suggestion, was it Kelly that asked for us to know earlier than, and Bob said maybe we make a motion and pass that as a board. We can discuss that. I think that's not an unreasonable request.
Are there further comments from the audience? Last call. All right, therefore, I'm going to declare that the public hearing is ended and that we adjourn to the referendum at a date yet to be determined.
Thank you so much for coming and all your comments. It's been very, very helpful. We now will go back to our previously scheduled board meeting. And you're welcome to stay.
And to go off of Kelly's comment, I do think having some sort of potential timeline that we could show to the community, I think would be very beneficial.
I did ask our attorney about the other issue, whether or not we could amend the call we could not without having to start all over again.
Maybe you might want to take your mask off. I can
Or
barely
just,
hear you.
just speak into the microphone.
Or speak into the
Yeah,
mic.
we turned sideways, you can't hear.
Sorry.
No, I did check with our attorney before, the meeting was whether or not if we change the the call of the regional plan and change the amendment, we would have to start all over again. So, the only way to accommodate what Kelly was asking for is actually to have a vote, if we wanted to, on setting a date, or no sooner than, or whatever you wanted to do. We can do that. We can't do that tonight. We'd have to have it at a board meeting for that purpose, and we could put that on an agenda. We do need a special board meeting in order to set the referendum date. We need to have an actual meeting to do that, not tonight. So we would have a special meeting between now and probably the next 2 weeks. Hopefully next week if we could do it. Are people free?
Yeah.
What day did you say?
I said next week sometime if you're free.
It depends.
Filling up
What day.
Did you maybe
Yeah,
want
I
to
mean,
see if
we
we're
need
going
to
to get
meet,
more
so.
state guidance on?
Yeah, the other issue is that if we could blend that with any state guidance on masking, it would be good to do both things at the same time. So if we're free next week or possibly the week after, up to the like 20 something, we don't have much time before school starts. We just have basically 2 weeks, so it'd have to be within the next week and a half or so. But if we're going to have it on the November election date, I have to have the notice to the town clerk by September 2nd to get on the ballot. And again, it would be a referendum like we did this spring. It would be 2 votes. You know, you'd have to go to a separate place. So.
And my recommendation would be, I think this is where I hear many of you going, is if you were interested in a resolution that would put a no earlier date on this, to get that on the agenda for that same meeting, so that it was clear to the public as you're setting the referendum that you're also committed to whatever timeline it is that you want to commit to. I think what I've heard from a lot of people, a lot of them left now, is if we did a no earlier than say June 2023, that would give a full 19 to 20 months, presuming a positive approval through the referendum. If you get a negative, it doesn't matter. But if you got a positive one, and again, that wouldn't commit us to closing the school at that date. It would just reassure the public that it wouldn't happen before that date. And that's a pretty long runway, and I would say from a staff perspective, we could make that transition happen better with that type of runway. So again, my only point is if you're going to do it, I wouldn't wait. I would do it the same night you're going to do the other.
So if we could have an agenda that would act on, one, setting the referendum date, discussing possible vote on not to close no sooner than, and 3, deal with the masks issue if we have guidance from the state. Right now, the only guidance we have is that September 30th, masks are required for all schools. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I think you know, we've been trying to hold out on putting anything out, and we still think we may get some different guidance out of the governor's office. But I've been at 3 different state settings this week, and all of them just keep reinforcing what Bob just said, and that is absent any change from the executive order that goes through the end of September. Required to wear on buses, vaccinated or unvaccinated. Required to wear in schools, vaccinated or unvaccinated. Not required outdoors, regardless of vaccination status. And whether people want to hear me say this or not, that vaccination of all eligible individuals remains the top mitigation strategy to hopefully get us away from any of these requirements. That's not me telling anyone they have to go get vaccinated. Please don't hear me say that. But I would recommend you talk to your physician or healthcare provider and have that conversation. I think that would be beneficial.
Do we need to have a policy meeting before any potential vote or change in the mask component? And I say this because the prior policy had a expiration date.
Right.
And that expiration date is actually passed. I think it was set for the end of the school year. So we have to vote on something. Otherwise, the policy wouldn't be at least the board policy would not be in effect.
Yeah, my opinion is you don't, because in the hierarchy, you can't create a local policy that contradicts with a state order. And so the default would be to the state order. I think the only situation I would see arising where a local policy would be necessary is if the state gives discretion to localities, as they have on the municipal side currently. And so I think you guys know that some towns have now enacted ordinances, and ours have not currently, is my best understanding. But that is their option as a municipality. And I think the other thing that may come is we may have other ordinances that affect non-school settings, and that may even be why the governor hasn't come out with anything yet, because he wants to put it all out at the same point. I don't have any direct knowledge of that, but it would probably be the way that things would naturally have happened in the past, that they don't want to put out something just about schools, but maybe something that impacted schools and anything else if they have to take us back to any of the restrictions we had in the spring and the winter.
If I'm not
Andrew, we could have a policy meeting before the next board meeting or that same night in case we did have to act.
Right, yeah. I mean, we could do that in a pinch.
Yeah, I'm just worried about the governor's also
Yeah.
emergency powers eventually going away, which, I mean, they expire in September. So I just don't want a super fast turnaround and us having to go through multiple policy components in a very short period of time to address that issue.
Yeah. So I will try to, next Wednesday, I don't know, what's the date? It'll be the 18th? For another board meeting, special meeting, are you guys tied up, Doug?
I am. I'm tied up.
We already have a building committee scheduled that evening from 5 to 6, so that might make it a good night or a bad night, I don't know. I mean, Kim and I will already be here, and so will several of you that serve on the building committee.
I have other plans.
I could probably come but if it's like a short meeting, like if we're there for like an hour.
Yeah. Well,
What does Thursday look like?
Well, you could have the meeting without me, that's not.
Does that work for you?
Well, but policy also, right?
yeah.
Well, could we just
I
maybe
won't be there
send
for
out
that.
like an email and see what everybody's
right.
availability
We
is?
can ask Meg to do that.
We have another chair for policy, that's not it.
Yeah.
We'll get out something and it'll probably be sometime towards the middle or end of next week.
I feel punched.
And we'll get it out by Friday.
for the board meeting.
Yes.
And then the policy meeting will be when?
Hopefully it will be right before that board meeting.
Same day, right
Same,
before?
yeah.
So that makes the Wednesday with the building meeting.
Tight, yeah.
I can move the building. I haven't sent the agenda out yet, so I can certainly move that
All right.
if that board works better.
Meg will send out, get a quick answer when everybody's ready. You know, and if we know that the governor's gonna act on Thursday, we'll delay it further. You know, if we get notice that there's gonna be a governor action, you know, by Thursday or Friday of next week, then we will wait.
We have to know that, what, 2
So we're
days in
talking
advance in order to.
Right.
Wednesday the 18th?
Yeah, but I mean,
Do it 24 hours.
we get,
We're talking Wednesday the 18th.
Doug is getting, you know, almost daily comments from
Yes.
everybody else from the State Department of Education and others, so we will know something. All right?
So one last thing on the discussion of the public hearing we just had. I think our intention was to have another thought exchange go out so that we can get feedback from people on what they heard and any additional questions they might have. Is that something that we should entertain or not?
I wasn't aware that that was the plan, but
Well, I thought it was.
it's certainly I mean, it takes about 2 minutes to launch one of those things, so it's not, yeah, the question is, how many more people would participate, right? And the first would have to be like, now that we've had a public hearing, I think one of the things I should have brought up when the people were here, but they'll get it anyway, is we are going to update our frequently asked questions based on some of the questions that came through the thought exchange and based on some of what we heard tonight, to give some clarity around some of that, and like to get that out by tomorrow or Friday at the latest.
Yeah.
I think another thought exchange is a good idea.
Okay.
Especially as it's easy for you to do,
Yeah.
because there has been no opportunity for what we could hope are many people who attended remotely.
So let me
for
ask
them to
this
comment.
loaded question, again, without asking people to commit, but just what I'm kind of hearing and where I thought the energy of the room was going. Should it be framed around the timeline?
Yes.
And kind of saying, you know, at the hearing, we heard a number of people indicate that whether they were for or against the issue, they think if the school closes, having more time. Again, I have to clean up the language. I'm just giving you kind of the gist of it, and then asking them, you know, what further thoughts or questions do they have, kind of hearing that.
Yeah, what
We
we
may
want
get
to
all
do.
the same exact thoughts we got before and all the same readings, but it would at least let us know if the needle had moved at all.
I don't think so. I think what we want to ask is, people who watched, if you watched the meeting, or if you didn't, do you have any comments you'd like to make? All the people who could not stand up here
Right.
should have an opportunity to speak to us. And I think that's the best way, the thought exchange apparently is the best way to do it. So if you did
Right.
nothing but say, could you tell us what you thought about the meeting? Do you want to say anything to us? If that's
Do we know
all
how
you
many
ask.
people are watching?
Well, let's hear from them.
Okay. I guess not to be argumentative, I'd like to hear from everybody, not just about what happened tonight, but just continue on the issue, if that's acceptable.
Okay, well,
That makes sense.
Yeah, maybe just ask a question.
Yeah, bury it.
Did you
bury the
attend the meeting or watch?
That can be a survey question. That's
Just
a
a
good way to
survey
get to
question.
it, Victor,
Okay.
if you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Then they can indicate that, and then we'll know
Yep.
who was answering based on watching tonight and who was doing it. Okay, that's good. We can do it. Now, I have to put a timeline on it, and so knowing when our next meeting is, I
Not
think
before,
it would be important.
yes.
I'll have to wait till Meg sets the date
Yep.
of our next meeting. So, but I'll try to get it out today,
Okay,
tomorrow or
thank
Friday.
Okay, great. Any other comments?
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
I would.
Would you like to make a motion to adjourn? Go ahead. Chris?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. You go, girl.